Hello and welcome to the channel. My name is Kubeir. I'm a CICC licensed immigration consultant. This channel is all about Canadian immigration news, updates, things you should do, things. Okay. Sometimes my microphone does tend to do strange things, but welcome back. And today we will, in this episode of our Canadian Weekly Roundup, we will be discussing, as usual, the provincial nominee draws, the okay, still no audio. I think the audio is on. So the provincial nominee draws, the brief discussion about express entry, and then we will come back to the question and answer. So just hold your questions till we get to that stage, and then we can take a look at them. Very quickly, starting with our quote of the week. Start where you are, use what you have, do what you can, said Arthur Ashe. Start where this is so true. Sometimes we're always waiting for that right moment, the better time. For example, you want to start a diet, I will start on Monday, I will start next week. You want to get onto some a new project or some new experience, you will start later. And we never tend to get to the point where we can say, okay, let's start it right now. And same thing applies to so many different things in life. And therefore, the idea is to start wherever you are. It doesn't matter where you are, just start and use whatever you have to get on with that journey. And whatever you can do, just get it done. And you will see very quickly that as soon as you put one step ahead of another, in front of another, you will be on your journey and hopefully reach your destination after that soon. Canadian Immigration Weekly Roundup. Stay up to date on Canadian immigration news and trends on our TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, of course, Twitter as well. Starting with the PNP draws. On the 4th of April, Ontario has invited 883 candidates combined through the master's graduate stream as well as through the PhD stream. Now, this is pretty cool because, these are individuals who are in Canada who are studying a master's program or a PhD program. And because they have completed that through one of the designated universities in Ontario, they will be able to apply for nomination directly through the expression of interest, of course. And total of 772 candidates were invited through masters, 131 through PhD stream. The low cutoff score was 52 for masters and only 48 for PhD. You don't need an employer job offer for this particular stream. So if you are considering to come to Canada to study and you are looking for a master's program, then Ontario could be a good opportunity, because after you complete your master's program, you would be eligible to apply for nomination through the master's PhD stream. In the investment side of Ontario's projects, they did choose to invest $25 million additionally over the next 3 years to support their immigration programs. Makes sense considering that their quotas have been increased by about 60 to 70%, which basically makes, which they obviously will need more manpower and more systems in place to run those programs. So it absolutely makes sense that they wanted to sort of add more investment there so that they can speed up the processing. That would be great, right? I mean, everybody wants to see their nominations coming through sooner. British Columbia on the 4th of April invited 175 candidates through BC PNP. This was the general draw, which basically means all the candidates with all knock codes and occupations were invited in this particular draw. The minimum SIR score obviously was a bit high, 103. International graduates with minimum SIR score of 103 and entry-level semi-skilled candidates with minimum SIR score of 85 were invited in this draw, which again, with British Columbia, but you do need to understand is that you need an employer job offer, an eligible job offer, an eligible employer with eligible job offer, and then you would be able to apply through the stream. In most programs, that is the condition. Again, if you are completing a master's degree in 7 different fields that they have identified, then you would not need a job offer. But apart from that, you need a job offer for all PNP programs in British Columbia. 17 childhood educators were also invited with only a point of 60, which is pretty cool. Again, low scores always are nice. And then 6 healthcare workers also with the points of only 60. New Brunswick, on the 4th of April, a total of 186 candidates were invited. Now, this is 70 were invited through the employment connection stream and 42 were invited through the student connection stream. Now, 72 through the New Brunswick occupations and demand connection. Now, usually we don't talk about New Brunswick PNP because in most cases, you either need to be in New Brunswick or you need to have a connection to the province, or obviously you need a job offer. But the good thing with what New Brunswick has done and what is happening with them, first of all, they have announced that they have an increased allocation of 67%. They didn't give a number as to what that new number was. They just said that their nomination quotas have been increased by 67%, which, as I said, is always good to hear and good to know. But talking about their programs, there is one specific program which stands out, which is currently ongoing, and that is the New Brunswick Student Connection Stream. Now, in that stream, if you are studying in New Brunswick, once you complete your education, within 6 months, you can apply for expression of interest under the New Brunswick Student Connection Stream. It's very simple, very straightforward, nothing complicated there, no job offer needed. So the fact that you've completed your education, the fact that you have an IELTS score of CLB7, let's say you have 1 year of work experience, in the NOC that you wish to sort of pursue your career in, that's basically all that you would need. Of course, proof of funds, etc. Those are minor things, but this is basically all that you would need to create your expression of interest in the New Brunswick Student Connection Stream. And therefore, again, once you are looking to study in Canada, and then consider New Brunswick as well, because pretty simple, straightforward stream, right? The only issue with these streams is one, that these streams can open and close at any point of time. They can change at any point of time in terms of criteria. And obviously, New Brunswick being a small province, there is also that situation where how many students will they take in through this stream, right? At some point of time, scoring factor will come into play, just like this time. No, in this time there is no scoring factor, but in most cases, at some point of time, when they will have more people who are eligible to apply, they would start applying some sort of a scoring factor, because then everybody will not be able to get through. So sooner than later, if you are eligible, if you're thinking, may as well get in there and get it done. Alberta, finally, they have also conducted a draw, but this was last week. 30th of March, actually a week before that, they invited 150 candidates, 150. The only problem with that is that they don't really make the announcement soon enough. So it's not like if they conduct a draw today, they will announce today. They publish that draw maybe a week later or something. And a bigger problem is that they don't announce the criteria under which they have invited people. For example, they will not tell you which occupations, which NOC code. And in this case, all they told us was that the candidates who were invited, they required a family connection in Alberta. By family connection, it means if you have siblings in Canada, if you have parents in Canada, grandparents in Canada, then you may be eligible to apply under the stream. But in order to apply, you don't have to do anything. You just need to have an express entry profile. And if Alberta considers your NOC code to be in priority and understands that you have a family connection, in this case, as I said, sibling parents, then they may choose to invite you. In this case, the minimum cutoff was only 372. So congratulations to all those 150 candidates. You have hit a jackpot. Don't let this one go. Quebec also came to the party for the draws. Again, on 30th of March, they invited 619 candidates under the regular skilled worker program. The candidates required a job offer. This is becoming quite the way to go about. And they required a job offer outside the territory of Metropolitan Montreal with a minimum score of 578, which is quite a high score, to be very honest. Express entry. Let's talk. We're not talking about draws because there was no draw, but this is primarily a bit of data from 2022. Data shows that in 2022, IRCC issued 37,315 ITAs. We already know that 6th July onwards, they started the regular express entry draws as well. But overall, the whole year of 2022, they issued a total of 37,315 invitations, of which 19,160 invitations went to the PNP applicants. So by PNP applicants here, I mean individuals who had received nominations in the express entry profile. So they had received 600 points as well. And based on that, 19,160 of those were the ones who received the ITA, which basically meant the remaining 17,905 were the ones who received an ITA through the regular express entry draws, and their CRS score was anywhere between 491 and 600, because obviously they were not the ones who received a PNP nomination or 600 points. The good thing here is that of these 17,905, 12,960 were Canadian experience class candidates. So, there has always been this general emotion or a feeling that why is there no CEC specific draw? Why is there not conducting CEC draw, specific draw? And this is unfair and then. But this data tells you that they did actually invite 13,000 Canadian experience class candidates only within the year of 2022, when they were not really conducting draws, but they started conducting the draws in the later half of the year. As I said, 19,160 went to PNPs, which is obviously because they had the higher number of points. 12,960 went to Canadian experience class. That leaves you with roughly about 5,000, less than 5,000, which basically went to federal skilled workers or federal skilled trade categories. Now, these were also people who either had a job offer or who were bilingual, only 5,000 of them. So that gives you a bit of a glimpse of how the whole express entry played out in 2022. That shows you where the priorities were. Now, these were the provinces that issued those nominations to those 19,160 candidates, of which Ontario was on top with 5,170 nominations, followed by British Columbia with 4,240 and Alberta with 3,385. Saskatchewan with only 1,235, because a big part of their otherwise nomination also went to OID streams, occupation and demand streams, and some other streams that they have. So that's where the majority or the chunk of the nominations went. In other news, month of March in express entry was phenomenal, of course, because it broke so many records. It was basically, they hit 4 major milestones, if you want to call that. Most number of invitations that were issued in a month, forget about the 2 years. I think this is the second most all-time number of invitations, because we have to take into account 2021 when IRCC conducted a CEC specific draw inviting 27,332 people with the lowest CRS score of 75. That was in 1 month the most number of invitations issued. But second most has to be now, where they issued 21,000 invitations in a span of just 2 weeks. This was also the lowest all program CRS ranking draw score in the last 27 months, 481, because obviously the score before that, the lowest score before that was 468, which was on the 23rd of December 2020. So yeah, 27 months later, this is where we have come to 481, and look at us, we are celebrating a score of 481. What's express entry come to? Now, the good news on the other side of things was the postgraduate work permit holders 2023. Their extension policy was announced as promised on the 6th of April. But during this whole week of 6th of April and earlier, IRCC had already started sending out emails, first of all, to sort of tell people that they would be able to opt in for a simplified process whereby they can just go into their GCK account, click on postgraduate work permit extension option that was available in their GCK account, enter the address details or correct the address details, enter the passport details or correct the passport details, and then just click opt in. What this would do is that if they were eligible, they were inside Canada, their mailing address has been updated, passport details were updated, then they would receive a work permit, extended work permit, within a span of 2 to 3 months. So by 31st of July, they would receive it in their mailbox, and they don't have to pay any fee for this, which is the simplified process, which is pretty cool, because you don't have to pay any additional money to get this work permit. The work permit extension of 18 months would happen. So 18 months from the date your original work permit is expiring. So it's not like if your work permit is expiring, you will still get 18 months from the date it was being issued. No, you were getting full 18 months from the date your work permit is expiring, which is again, giving you ample of opportunity to get your permanent residence pathway sorted out. For people who were not given the opt-in option because either their work permits had expired or were expiring pretty close by, Then for them, the policy was finally announced that they can now apply for extension. Now, applying for extension, very simplified process again. Go to your GCK account, answer a few questions, say you are applying for extension under the public policy. You would get the option to then continue with your application, complete the form number 5710, complete the form, enter that you're applying under the postgraduate work permit 2023 public policy, add a letter of explanation that you're applying under this open work permit policy, you're eligible for it, and that's just about it. Pay the fees, of course, but you have been exempted to pay from the open work permit fee. You just have to pay for the work permit processing fee of $155, and that's just about it. You will get your 18-month work permit extended. So if your work permit has already expired, then you will get 18 months from the date the work permit decision is being made, and you've been given the extension from that date onward. So you have full-fledged 18 months to go forward with. And again, if your work permit is expiring in future, then 18 months from that particular date. Now, there are so many other different kinds of questions that I've been seeing. First one is that if you're outside Canada, can you apply for opt-in? No, you cannot. You have to be inside Canada to opt in, number one. Number two, spouse open work permits. That I think is the biggest concern and worry for people whose spouse open work permits are also expiring, right? In that case, can they opt in? No, because if you opt in, your spouse is not going to get an automatic work permit. This is a postgraduate work permit authorization. This is a postgraduate work permit policy, not spouse open work permit policy. There is a differentiation between the two. Therefore, if you're looking to apply for your spouse's open work permit along with yours to get an extension, then don't opt in. Apply for the regular extension so that you can also add your spouse's application together. In this case, make sure you add your employment experience letter with job description and of course your pay stubs that you would normally do for a spouse open work permit. This is what you can do to apply together. Otherwise, if you're opting in, once you get the work permit, once you have your own work permit, then either your spouse can flagpole and get their work permit, or you can apply for your spouse's open work permit online. Both these options are open to you. There is no technicality around there. Do not make it more complex. Sometimes, when these policies come, people, instead of reading what is given, and it's quite simple and straightforward, they just assume so many things and make it much more complex or complicated than it actually is. It's not. This is not a spouse open work permit policy. This is a postgraduate work permit policy. There is no option for your spouses to get an automatic extension. Just understand that. Once you've understood that, then you probably will be able to get through that without much complication. So that's another one. Another question which has been coming up is about the interim work authorization. The interim work authorization, as the term itself means, it is interim. It basically means it's a stopgap solution. It is in between. In between what? In between processing your work permit. While they are working on your application, they do not want you to stop working. They want you to continue working. Even if your work permits have expired, even if your work permit are expiring, doesn't matter. You can work because you now have a work authorization. This has been given to you. Please start working. This work authorization, this is interim document, is valid until 20th of May next year, 2024. That does not mean this is your work permit. That does not mean that your work permit is valid till 20th of May. It just means that this interim work authorization, which is a stopgap solution, is valid till 20th of May 2024. So that they can work on your work permit. Once you get your work permit, that will have the actual validity of your work permit. Now, another confusion, another question which is like bothering so many people is the passport validity. Now, if your passport is expiring, tough luck. Get it renewed. If you will get it renewed, you can get validity as per your new passport. If you cannot get it renewed, you can still continue for opt-in. You can still continue to apply for extension. It's just that your new work permit validity is going to be as per your passport validity. If you can accept the passport, your work permit validity as per the new passport, your old passport validity, then by all means apply. If you cannot accept it, if you want a longer duration, then get your passport renewed. It's as simple as that. Why are people making it so complicated and creating so many questions around it, so many complexities around it when there are none that exist? So keep it simple, keep it straightforward. They're telling you, apply for extension. They're telling you, get your passport extended. If you have a longer duration of passport extension, then, or rather your passport validity, then they can give you your full extension of 18 months. But if your passport is expiring sooner, then your work permit validity will end with the passport's validity. That's all that is there with the work permit extension. It's pretty simple and straightforward. It's not a complicated application. You can do it yourself. You don't need any consultant. You don't need to pay anybody any kind of fee at all. There is no problem. Now, the only small situation here is if your work permits have already expired, which basically means you're out of status, the interim work authorization that you have is just an authorization for you to work. It does not mean that you are now in status. This is not giving you a status. By using this, you cannot apply for an open work permit for your spouses. No, you need a work permit to apply for your spouse open work permit. Also, this interim work authorization is just telling you can work. It does not tell you that you are now back in status. You cannot leave Canada and then say, hey, I have interim work authorization, I'm going to return back. That's not your visa either. Okay, it's just interim work authorization. You still need to get back into status. That is your responsibility. So if you have lost your status, you can restore your status. When you're submitting your application for extension, in the same application, check on the box where it says restore my status. Check on that box and then pay the fee of $227 for restoration in addition to your work permit extension fee. Add the fee receipt with your application and voila, you are now on your way to getting your work permit extended as well as going back in status. That's it. There is nothing else to it. Okay. Do not complicate it. Do not pay any fee to anybody and save yourself that money. You can then use that money towards your application fee later on for your permanent residence as would needed. Okay, that's basically all that we had for today's presentation. Of course, if you're still here, hit on the like button and then obviously subscribe to the channel so that we can get this information and videos out to more and more people. Now, I did want to talk to you today about another issue, which is dual intent. Now, what's happening with dual intent is that there has been a recent update on IRCC's website where they have started talking about the dual intent in terms of that this dual intent, how does it apply? Who all will it apply to? Can students take benefit of it? Can visitors take benefit of it? Can permanent residents take benefit of it? And how will it actually apply and to who all will it apply? Now, I will just very briefly today, because I'm not going to take this subject in a more detailed manner. I'm going to do a separate video on it a bit later on during this week. But today, very briefly touching on this because it impacts and affects a lot of international students. And of course, people who have applied for spouse permanent residents, but applying for the visit visas. So what it basically means is, and don't worry about this link, I will post it in the description after I'm done with the video, that it is absolutely fine if you have dual intent. That's what this new update is saying. So it's actually not a new update. There have been some changes that have been made to it after so many times people have been going to federal court, challenging decision. So this particular document is just giving you more information and detail as to what dual intent is. Dual intent is when you wish to come to Canada for permanent residence, but at the same time, you may want to come to Canada temporarily as well. How does that, where does this happen? For example, you're coming to Canada now as an international student, but your actual intention, or you also have the intention to stay in Canada permanently, which, to be very honest, is the case with 99% of the international students who come to Canada. Who wants to come to Canada to actually study, right? I doubt there are many out there. Majority of you want to come to Canada because you want to get your permanent residence pathway. And therefore, having dual intention is absolutely fine. It is legit. It is acceptable. And visa officers cannot show bias because of this. They cannot show that, oh, because you want to stay in Canada because for permanently, therefore we will refuse your application just on that grounds. No, they can't do that. So this is what it is talking about. The applicants have a right to fair and impartial decision maker. The courts have indicated that it is necessary to avoid even the possibility or perception of bias, examples which include judging a matter before it is heard and prejudicial attitude. Examples of bias would be a belief that applicants with open, closed, or prospective permanent residence applications automatically have a desire to remain in Canada past the authorized period of stay. So this is the context of this particular document. As I said, I will make a more detailed video on this a bit later on. But to give you a very, very quick, another context here is, in assessing, this paragraph, and let me just make this slightly bigger so you can look at this one. in assessing an application for temporary residence. So for example, if you are submitting an application for a visit visa, for a study permit, if you have taken care of these aspects in your application, there is a high possibility, high probability that your application will be approved. And what are those? The length of the time that you will be spending in Canada. So for example, if you are coming to Canada as a visitor, indicating that you want to stay in Canada for 6 months is never a good idea. Why? Because why would you want to stay in Canada for 6 months? You're visiting Canada, okay, for crying out loud. So visit means 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. It basically means if you can afford to visit Canada for 6 months, it means you have very weak ties to your home country. It means there is nothing there in your home country which needs you to go back. And therefore, have a reasonable duration of time that you want to visit Canada. Okay. Means of support. Now, you're coming to Canada temporarily. If you do not have enough funds, finances that support you, then that becomes a question again. Because if you do not have enough means to support you, means you may be a person who may resort to illegal work in Canada. And by working illegally in Canada, you also might be a person who would not want to return back because you're working illegally in Canada. And therefore, that becomes a concern. So hence, provide sufficient finances, funds to show that you can support yourself in Canada during your stay. Obligation and ties to home country. This is a very important one. Most of the applications are refused because you're not able to show this. Obligations, by obligations you mean could be family obligations, could be some sort of voluntary obligations in terms of you being connected to some sort of voluntary organizations, and you need to be present for certain aspects of the business that you're conducting there. You could be a business person and therefore you have business obligations to return back to. Of course, ties to home country again would mean financial ties, asset ties, emotional ties, family ties. All these constitute as ties. The more you are able to provide, the better it becomes in your case. The purpose and the context of the stay. Why are you coming to Canada? What is the purpose of your stay? You have to be able to provide the purpose and the context. Just because I am going to Canada because I have a friend there in itself is not going to help. What kind of a friend? How long have you known your friend? Establish the relationship. Provide an invitation letter from your friend. How long are you going to be staying there for? What all are you going to be doing? Who all are you going to be visiting? The more detailed information you're able to provide, the better the chances for you to get through with that. Again, also applies to study visas. The purpose: you want to study in Canada. Why do you want to study in Canada? By studying in Canada, what difference does it make for your future career prospects? Could you have studied elsewhere? Why choose Canada over that elsewhere? And hence, your explanation will make a big difference in getting this application approved. The credibility of the documents and the information submitted. So many times people submit bank statements where large deposits have been made very, very recently. They're unable to explain it because the only idea of showing that large bank statements or the deposits is so that you think you can show more funds to the visa officer. But the visa officer is not convinced with the funds because the money has come into your account very recently. The credibility is now in question, and therefore that becomes a problem. So many times people also provide fake documents, fraudulent documents. People hide information. People provide inflated information, and all of this raises the credibility on your application as well as the information you're providing. Of course, not disclosing your prior refusals always is a big problem. That also raises question on your credibility. And of course, that also amounts to misrepresentation. And finally, past compliance with the requirements of IRPA. Okay, now this is applicable for people who probably have overstayed, whether in Canada or outside Canada, a different country. Of course, it then directly reflects on your compliance with the law of the land as well as your credibility. So collectively, if you're able to address these main points in your application for temporary residence, if you're able to satisfy the visa officer, you're able to provide credible documentation to support these factors, then in most cases, than none, your application would be approved and you would be on your way to Canada. So as I said, this is part of the dual intent, whereby you maintain the fact that you want to live in Canada permanently, but at this point of time, you're visiting Canada temporarily, and that you would be a person who would comply with the law of the land and then obviously return back within your authorized valid period of stay. This is primarily what is dual intent, which we will tackle later on during this week in more detail. If you're still here, as I said, hit on that subscribe or hit on that like button so the video goes out to more and more people. But let's get on with your questions now. Before I received ITA, I was meeting both FSW and CEC. I updated my funds and now meeting only CEC. Since I received IT and the CEC score remains unaffected, is it okay to proceed with the application? If you are a Canadian experience class and if you are meeting the requirements and eligibility of Canadian experience class, you're being invited under Canadian experience class, there is no requirement for proof of funds for you, and therefore you can submit your application under, without any issues. If the system is asking for proof of funds, you can upload a blank document, or sorry, not a blank, a document which states that you are eligible under experience class and therefore exempt from providing any proof of funds. That's absolutely fine. Will my tourist visa get cancelled after I receive my PR visa? If not, can I use my tourist visa post soft landing to re-enter Canada if my PR card is not ready? No, you cannot do that, and please do not try to do that. If you wish to re-enter Canada, please apply for PRTD, because now you're a permanent resident. Apply for permanent resident travel document and you would be much better off. Do I need to list all positions I worked at a company as separate employment records if tier code remains the same? I have one, I do not know what EVL stands for. I have one EVL stating both designations. You could choose to have separate designations as long as your employment letter also indicates those separate designations, or you could choose to go with the last one as long as the knock code remains same. In most cases, I would always recommend to go with entering different designations and provide the knock code, and your employment letters should also indicate those separate designations and state that your job description remained the same during the entire duration of your tenure or during all these titles or designations. I have 4 savings account. Do I need to provide letters from all account or just the one I'm showing your balance? I would usually go with just one account where you have your proof of funds. I have received IT in the last draw of 2022 in November. When I should expect PPR? Well, you can check IRCC website for the processing times. I think it's within 6 months at this point of time on an average for most applications. Do I need to list? Oh, we just did this. Can I apply for postgraduate work permit extension and spouse open work permit together? My spouse is in India. I am in Canada on postgraduate work permit. Yes, you can. You will just need to make sure when you're adding your spouse's work permit application, you do add your employment letters and your 3 pay stubs along with your spouse's documentation and application. I'm sorry, but there is no question there. CEC category apply as truck driver at 18 March 2023 CRS score. Please tell me. I cannot understand, to be very honest, that question. Truck drivers are eligible to apply in express entry. It will all depend on your CRS score if you get invited or not at this point of time. Please listen. 1 year experience, 2 year diploma. My scores secure. I am sorry, I'm not able to understand your question. Again, to check your scores, you can go onto the IRCC website and check the CRS calculator. Alternatively, if you have Canadian work experience, you have your language skills score, then you can create your express entry profile, and that would also give you your scores. I made my EE profile on 23rd of January, added work experience. Tier 1 knock was my primary. Can I change it to tier 0 as I have 1 year experience as of 23rd? No ITA yet. Yes, of course, you can change your primary knock code as long as you have work experience. There is no problem. Listen, it's an express entry profile. You can make as many changes as you want. There is absolutely no issues with that. I got a notification from Ontario. My experience with primary knock code in the last 5 years ended in February 23. As per Ontario, it needs to be 1 year experience last 5 years. Would I get nomination in this case? If you had already submitted your application, then you're good. So do not worry about the fact that your work experience has ended. But you're saying your experience in the primary knock code ended in February. Now, go as per the eligibility requirement. If your experience in which you're getting invited, it is not within the last 5 years, there is a high possibility your application may not go through. But always follow the eligibility requirement and criteria, and then you would know better as to what your chances are. Sukun, thank you for the super chat. I found after ITA that months entered for back. Uh, back stands for, I think, your bachelor's degree. Is it okay to update month for back? Back. I think I'm assuming you're talking about your bachelor's degree post ITA, or do I need to decline ITA? Please do not decline ITA. You can make the changes. There is no problem with you amending the date for your bachelor's degree education, or sometimes even employment, depending on a month or what kind of a change you're making. In most cases, it's not a problem. You can always explain in a letter of explanation that you made an error earlier. Do not decline ITAs. Express entry is very, very uncertain and inconsistent. Anything is possible. So don't let go of your ITAs that easily. Okay, these small changes you can make. There is no problem. If ever there is if you're quite anxious, then always add a letter of explanation for that. In citizenship grant application, I gave all my address history except I made an error where one address, 1 year period is seen in next address. Would this create a problem? Where one address, I'm not able to understand exactly what you mean here. But if you are saying that you made an error because the address of you made an error in terms of what period you entered, then as long as it was the same province, similar city, then you would not have much of an issue. Otherwise, you can always raise a web form and send it to them. Postgraduate work permit expiring in Jan 2023, applied fake extension, now applied under the new policy. If Jan extension is refused, can I continue to work under the new policy and interim mail authorization? Will I lose status? Yes, you can continue working. There is no problem because you have the interim work authorization. Now, because you applied for your new application, I usually recommend to people who are applying, who have already applied for fake extension, who are now making a new application, I always recommend them to add the restoration fees, just on the safe side of things, depending on how the visa officer is assessing. It's always better. The fact that your previous application is refused, you basically are out of status. The fact that you applied for another application before the decision was made gives you a bit of cover, but the fact is, the minute your first application is decided upon, that decides what your status is. So if that has removed your status, means basically you've lost your status. Therefore, the idea is it's always better to add the restoration fee, just to save you from any kind of complexities in these matters. I finished 2 years of Canadian experience and that will make my score 490, but my CRS score has increased to 490 today, which is 1 month early. If I get invite, should I decline? No, you can absolutely. So this is a very, very common question. In a lot of situations, or rather not in a lot of situations, in most cases, people tend to get credited for their 1 year of Canadian work experience 1 month earlier. That's absolutely fine. That is because the system is calculating the work experience based on month, year. They're giving you the work experience points from the first of the starting month to the first of the ending month, which happens to be 1 month earlier. In such cases, please continue with your ITA. There is no reason to decline it. However, submit your application only after completing your valid period of work, so that you are in compliance. The system has given you the IT earlier. You have not disclosed anything incorrectly. So it's not you who is on the wrong. You are not committing any misrepresentation. That is the main fear. So this is not misrepresentation. You have entered the information correctly. System is giving it to you 1 month earlier because that's a system glitch. It's a known glitch. However, as far as you're concerned, when you are submitting your application, make sure that you are completing your period of work and only then you are submitting your application. That way you are on the right side of things and hence you have no reason to worry. I received ITA for Ontario's master stream. I have active express entry profile. Planning to retake IELTS would boost my score. Should I apply for Ontario or wait for E? Well, the decision is yours. I can't tell you what you should do. It's entirely up to you. Express entry is highly inconsistent, highly uncertain. And 475 to be, not to be, who can tell you? The decision is yours to make. I mean, I would always take the bird in my hand. I will not wait for the two in the bush because they might not happen. I'm residing in Canada. I received an ITA. I've applied for PCC. I have a trip to the US next month. Will my PCC be invalid after my trip? Yes, it will. So you should submit your application before you make a trip to the US. In that case, you will not need a PCC to the US. Can I apply for postgraduate work permit extension? We already answered that. What do you think are the chances for the next draw? Will it be a no program? I'm sitting at 481. Do you think I'll get the IT in the next draw? I can't tell you. I don't know. Nobody knows. Obviously, the draw did not happen this week. So we are only now expecting that the express entry draws are going back to the 2-week regular routine. Based on that, let's hope if the draws happen next week. If the draws happen next week, the scores are going to be in the range of 480, 481, 482, those scores, because I do not expect them to continue issuing very high number of invitations. At some point of time, they will be back to their real logical senses, and they would be issuing invitations in the range of 3,000 to 4,000 ITAs per draw, because that is what will get them to the annual quota for this year. With that, the scores would, I mean, I don't see the scores dropping below 480 if they are issuing only 3,000 kind of ITAs. But it all depends on how many invitations and when do they choose to conduct the draw. If they conduct the draw in the coming week, then yes, 480, 481 is quite realistic. If they don't conduct the draw, which is also a possibility, then it can become a stretch, depending on how many invitations and how many people are adding into the pool. Can I claim sibling points before my sibling lands in Canada and attains signed COPR? No, you cannot. You will only be eligible for your sibling points once your sibling is a permanent resident. In this case, your sibling has a COPR but has not arrived in Canada, which basically means your sibling is not a permanent resident, and therefore you cannot claim the points for a sibling PR. Postgraduate work. Oh, we did answer this question. Yeah, we answered this question. My age is 26 under the knock code. Should I go for my study visa or wait for PNP? I can't tell you. I don't know your scores. I don't know anything about you except that your knock code is of an auditor. Please check express entry scores. Check what your chances are based on that. Look at the PNP options. And if you think your score is not high enough to get through with the express entry, then possibly look at the study in Canada option. I work as a consultant for Canadian company remotely. I reside in India, there in Canada. How do I show this experience? Show this experience with you being in India. This is not Canadian work experience. This will be treated as foreign work experience. If I include my wife in my Canadian experience entry profile, how long it will take to PR as she is India? It will be the same period of processing time. It is just that the processing of approving your application will be different. You will receive an in Canada COPR virtual landing, and your wife will be sending, you will be getting a passport request for your wife so that she can then send her passport for stamping to the visa office in India and then come to Canada. But the processing time is almost the same, give or take. While I'm applying for postgraduate work permit extension, I'm also adding my spouse's open work permit application with my extension application. So which document should I submit for my spouse? For your spouse, you will submit a copy of their work permit. If they do not have a work permit, then obviously a copy of their resume, proof of your relationship, proof of funds, your employment document with your job description and your pay stubs, and of course, a letter of explanation. IELTS is valid for 2 years. Does this count from the exam date or result date? I have this difference greater than 1 month due to investigation. Well, IRCC website has now been amended to show that it's the it's the result date, 2 years from the result date to be considered as the validity of IELTS. I, on the other hand, I'm very skeptical. I like to play the conservative game here. And the reason for that is when you are creating your express entry profile, in that you have to enter when did you take your IELTS exam, the date of the exam. And if you mention the date to be earlier than 2 years, then the system says that you are ineligible. And I usually go with that mind and I try to play conservative. But as far as the IRCC website is concerned, it says your IELTS are valid for 2 years from the date of your exam results. Okay, so yeah, you can always refer to IRCC website and take that as your guideline. Is trade certificate necessary to claim work experience as a cook under CEC? No, under CEC, you have no requirement for any trade certificate as such, because employment requirements are not considered during the assessment under express entry for experience class. I am inside Canada on intra-company closed work permit with my dependents not on board here and relieved India payroll. My wife is on open work permit. My spouse is on 18 years. As I don't know what the question is, and I do not know what we are asking here. Will my tourist visa get cancelled? We have already done this. Can I opt for postgraduate work permit extension if passport expires on Jan 25? Yes, you can. The only problem is that depending on when your original work permit is expiring, your new work permit validity will not be beyond the expiry of your passport. So if you're fine with that, then absolutely you can go ahead. There is no problem. Can someone assist with any info on Saskatchewan? Well, if you want any info on Saskatchewan, then the best place to get it would be the Saskatchewan's website. We have already done this. We did this. I have a job offer doing tier 1 job on study permit. Is there any chance for general draw? It seems to be targeted only draws right now. I don't know. I mean, I'm looking forward to a general draw, and I have a feeling there would be at least one for sure, because they can do only so many tech draws and healthcare draws. So therefore, I'm at some point of time, they have to diversify with the kind of occupation codes they are inviting, and the fact that Ontario has been given an increase in the allocation of their nomination quotas by nearly 69%. So they now have roughly 6.5, almost 7,000 more allocations for this year. I'm assuming that they should have one general draw, but of course, I don't know if and when that will happen. My husband's sponsorship application got approved. Big thanks to you. Well, I'm glad it got approved. Congratulations. Some family time coming up. So yeah, I'm really happy for you. Congratulations. Thank you for your time and information. They are very valuable. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that, Poona. Really appreciate it. Please shed some light on how mature international postgraduate students can get their PR as soon as possible. Which pathway could be faster? Well, that's a very, very open-ended question. If you are in Canada, for example, you could go to the New Brunswick Student Connect stream, right? Very simple, very straightforward. If you're eligible, you've completed your studies, you have CLB 7, you have express entry profile, 1 year of work experience, bang, you can apply for the nomination. You are in Ontario, you have completed your postgraduate master's program, you can apply for nomination. If you are in Manitoba, you've completed your education over there, you've completed 6 months of work experience, you have a job offer, bang, you can apply for nomination. So basically, in almost all the provinces, there is at least some or the other program that allows you to apply. It all depends which province you are in, what your background is. Do you have the support of the employer? Because employer job offer is going to be very, very critical. And based on that, you will be eligible. There are very few provinces which do not need the employer support for nomination for international students. New Brunswick is one of them. You don't need anything. Ontario Masters, British Columbia Masters, these are the other streams where you don't necessarily need to have an employer support. But the idea is to sort of look at your profile, look at the province that you are currently in, where you're studying, and based on that, you can review, research, and then figure out the best option for you. CEC is now 5 months, drastic reduction in FSW and CEC. Yeah, well, the idea is that the processing times will continue to drop. Don't forget, they have 65% additional staff handling express entry applications. All we can expect for that is that the processing times should reduce. As of right now, actually, the CEC inland processing time is about 3 months, 4 months average. That's what we are seeing. So yeah, hopefully it will continue to happen, continue to sort of get reduced as such. I've been working as a web developer under the same employer for 10 years now. Will it raise any question? Why should it raise any question? If you're working, you have documents to prove you're working, then you're working. Why should it raise any questions? I don't know what exactly you're referring to, but no, I mean, as long as you can prove your work experience, you're good. No decision has been made on postgraduate work permit extension application since I filed it on 30th October. Can I withdraw my application and reapply? Well, if you wish to withdraw, yes, you can. But if you will withdraw your application, then you would go out of status. And if you go out of status, then you also have to apply for restoration, which will cost you a little bit more money. I mean, I know it can get quite frustrating, but if you've applied for it, then just wait for it to get processed. Just because you will apply again doesn't mean that the new application will be processed any faster. So just wait it out. Submitted bridge open work permit application yesterday. Forgot to upload current work permit number application yet. Can it take weeks to reject incomplete application? Can I upload doc via web form before I get application number? Oh, no application number. Oh, okay. All that happened here was that you did not submit your current work permit. Well, yeah, you have absolutely used the web form. Sorry, use the web form and upload a copy of your work permit. Don't stress too much about it. In most cases, it will get approved. I'm hoping when you completed the form 5710, in that form, you indicated your work permit number. If you have indicated your work permit number, then you are safe, even if you haven't provided a copy. But yes, there is no harm in uploading a web form, or uploading a new work permit copy or your work permit copy through the web form and providing it to them. That's absolutely fine. Applied tourist visa December 2022, still pending. Contact local MP by my office who is in. Okay, told that eligible. What are the chances? I can't tell you what are the chances. It's a visit visa. If you provided good documents, if you provided ties to your home country, if you had reasons to travel to Canada and return back, then hopefully it will get approved. Okay. As a dentist, I worked in February 18. So this year, February, my experience is last 5 years is over. Can they reject? Well, as I told you earlier, you can check Ontario's website. If your work experience is not within the last 5 years, then yes, you are not meeting the eligibility requirement based on which your application will be reviewed accordingly. Okay, I'm seeing a lot of repeat questions. I'm going to skip most of them. Any trick to grab attention? No, there are no tricks to grab attention. If there were any tricks to grab anybody's attention in IRCC, well, everybody would have known it. No, unfortunately, there are no such tricks to grab anybody's attention whatsoever. What if IELTS get expired after receiving an ITA? Then it's a big problem because your IELTS needs to be valid when you submit your PR application. So the suggestion would be to take another IELTS exam and provide the copy of your new IELTS report when you're submitting a PR application along with the old one with an explanation that your IELTS had expired, so you have retaken them. Okay. There are no tricks to grab any attention. I mean, if you're asking me how can you get your application expedited, processed faster, there is nothing that you can do. You will have to wait for the processing to be done. You can always go with mandamus if your application has taken a long time, or but you've added your spouse in last year, so you'll have to wait. Or as I said, order GCMS notes to read what's happening. How can I create web form for citizenship application? The web form seems to not cater to citizenship application. You can raise well, that's a good question. You can raise a web form for the attention of the specific, in this case would be the Inside Canada, Sydney, Nova Scotia visa office, and upload your application under the other option that you get under the web form section. But yeah, but your issue was only to do with your address history for 1 year, right? At some point of time, you should get a completion application email. You can also respond back to that. Yesterday, I applied for postgraduate work permit extension. I did not receive any confirmation message. You will not. If you applied for the opt-in, that's all that you can do. Just apply for opt-in. If you try to do another opt-in, it will tell you you've already done it and you don't need to do anything else. So yeah, there is no problem. Your application should have gone into progress. Okay, I can see same questions. Any news from express entry targeted draw? Okay, no, we do not have any information. Hopefully it will be later this year. We do not know when later, but later this year. I didn't receive email from IRCC regarding opt-in, but I was able to opt in after logging. Is this method still valid? Well, the fact that you were able to opt in, wait until the July 31st. If you get your work permit by mail, good. If you don't, then come back and apply for the extension. Got laid off on closed work permit. Wife is pregnant. Any chance that Service Ontario can convert it to open work permit, as it is difficult to travel for her? Unfortunately, Service Ontario has no authority to change any work permit status. And no, you cannot change a closed work permit to open work permit on these conditions. At most, what you can do is change the status to a visitor so that she can continue staying in Canada. I've added restoration fee based on previous question. However, when I submitted file, it didn't allow restoration option to be ticketed since you are working. So put other and explained in letter. Well, that's a good thing to do. That should work. Okay, I'm in Canada on LMIA exempt role for less than a year. Shall I put Canadian experience as less than 1 year option or none option in EE profile? Well, for your Canadian experience, you just put it as ongoing. And because it is ongoing, it will calculate it as 1 year once you complete the 1 year. But to answer that question, have you completed 1 year of work experience in Canada? The answer will be no, because you haven't. Are first cousins considered as sibling? No. First cousins are cousins. They are not siblings. Your brother, sister by blood are your siblings. How can I show dual degree from India for CEC? By making separate entries in your education history and providing equivalency for each of them. That is how you will show dual degree. I haven't got email from IRCC for extension. My work permit expired on 28th of January. Should I apply same like last procedure or wait for email? You do not have to wait for any email. You can apply for extension using the extension option on the IRCC website. Work experience in the last 10 years is calculated till ITA or till documents uploaded as of the date you submit your application. Do I need job offer saying job offer valid for at least 1 year after issuing PR for OINP foreign worker stream? No, there is no such condition or required for Ontario's stream. When will be the next Ontario Tech Draw? I honestly have no idea when it would be. I hope soon, because I know a lot of you are waiting, but there is no way of saying when they will conduct the draw. There is no schedule for their draws. I didn't receive email from IRCC, but I was able to. We did this already. Our primary knock code needs to be in the targeted list for Ontario's tech draw to be eligible. That is correct. If your primary knock code is not targeted, then you will not get invited. You are doing great work. Keep up. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. Do you see the express entry, no program, or FSW score going down anytime before August or September? I do not know what you mean by anytime. The scores are already going down. The scores have come down to 481. So that is down from 500-ish, 557 in July of last year. Can I apply for work permit on visitor visa? Yes, you can. If you have an LMIA from an employer in Canada, or if you are applying for an LMIA exempt job, then you can apply for a work permit, yes. Had withdrawn from the university, came back to India, can I still enter Canada after taking admission in another college or university in another province? Well, it all depends. How long have you not been in Canada? Have you informed IRCC? Are you on a leave of absence? Has 150 days passed since you stopped studying? Because if 150 days have passed since you stopped studying, means you are no longer complying with the conditions of study permit, which basically makes your study permit invalid. When you return back to Canada, you could face some tough questions at the border. My score is 489. What's an option for me? Well, have an active express entry profile, keep your fingers crossed, and hope and pray for a quick express entry draw. In the past, you used to speak about backlogs. Please discuss backlogs. Well, backlogs has become a boring subject. Not many people are interested. Well, backlogs still exist. We still have about 2 million applications in backlog. And from what I understand, they are in process. They just don't seem to be a priority anymore because, they just don't seem to be a priority anymore. But of course, they are still being cleared out. There are not too many backlogs at this point of time. If there are backlogs, they are only because there have been significant changes within the application, because let's say you added your spouse, or there are some review questions or review issues in your application. For both issues, you can apply for GCMS notes to understand what can be done. Can I convert my ICT closed work permit to study permit inside Canada? Okay, so this word convert doesn't exist. You cannot convert anything. What you can do is you can apply. If you are currently in Canada on a closed work permit, you can apply for a study permit inside Canada. Yes. My sibling will land on 19th May. My CRS will reach 479. No, you cannot claim the points, because if you get an ITA and your sibling hasn't become a permanent resident when you got your ITA, that basically means you're in non-compliance of Section A 11.2 assessment criteria. Means you did not deserve to receive the ITA in the first place. Hence, there is a high possibility your application will be reviewed accordingly. On opt-in, if they ask if PP will expire on or after June 30th, 2025, going back to my previous question, my PP expires Jan 25. Is your old advice valid? Well, yes, it is valid. You can continue with it if you wish to. IRCC website says that. Alternatively, apply for if your opt-in system is not allowing you to apply, then you can make an extension application and apply through that. You will still be given your work permit validity until Jan 2025. Okay, I accidentally applied for postgraduate work permit extension on accidentally. Okay, 30th June with no restoration fee under job offer, but it is not from ESDC as my postgraduate work permit expired on 24th September. Now I'm on an implied status. Can I withdraw my application? Yes, you can withdraw your application, because your original postgraduate work permit expired on 24th of September. You would still be eligible to apply under the new postgraduate work permit stream policy, and therefore you can reapply. Yes, absolutely, with the restoration fees. I have experience under 2 different NOC. Can I submit expression of interest in one NOC code and create express entry profile in another NOC code? No, I mean, technically, yes, you can, because your expression of interest with Ontario is unrelated to your express entry profile. It's a non-express entry. So yes, technically, yes, you can. No problem there. You're doing great work. Thank you for helping everyone. I also should have your advisory committee. Yeah, well, I hope so. But no, I'm glad they do not have me in their advisory committee, because all my advices would definitely not be taken up, and therefore I would get demotivated and I would leave anyways. So yeah, it won't work. I'm rather being outside and screaming and shouting that what they can and cannot do. But I mean, I hope they consider so many of the things that so many people who are advocating for the betterment of the whole community as such. But then at the end of the day, IRCC has their own think tank, the way they choose to plan and operate, and I doubt they sometimes even listen to anybody outside. Will there be another postgraduate work permit extension? My postgraduate is expiring on 2024. Well, I don't know. They have been doing the unexpected for the last 2-3 years. The possibility would be quite low, but again, there is no way of saying whether they will do it or not. You can only hope and pray, but there is absolutely no way, with no certain way, to say whether they will be extending it again or not. All right, the questions continue. Wazid, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. Questions continue, but I have to run. I've got some other commitments. Today is Saturday, of course, and some things to be done. Thank you so much for joining in. I appreciate your taking the time to be here. Please do subscribe to the channel. Of course, if you're looking for appointments one-on-one to discuss your applications or anything that you wish to sort of have any queries or concerns, then that is the link. By all means, do connect with us. Our masterclass is full, thankfully. Thank you so much for everybody who has subscribed to the masterclass. This is on the 16th of April, next week, next Sunday, where I will be hosting all of you for people who have subscribed. to handle their application and take them through the whole application step by step. And so, yeah, as I said, slots were full and we had to close the masterclass. Thank you for joining in. And yeah, that's just about it. Thank you so much for joining with me today, and I shall see you next time. Take care.